Sacred Mysteries.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Sacred Mysteries Worldwide channel. I'm your host, MignonGrayson, and you are in the Sacred Mysteries School of Spiritual Learning. Today's topic is one of my favorites. We're going to talk about Ancestor Reverence, Ancestor Veneration. It's known by different names. This is actually a remake video because the video that I did early on, maybe about over a year ago, the sound wasn't too good. So I got a lot of people saying that they couldn't hear me. So I said, let me just do another one so that everyone can hear what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this very, very important topic. Ancestor Reverence, in my opinion and my viewpoint from what I've lived, is the single most important aspect of your spiritual path, of your spiritual growth, your spiritual support, and your spiritual aspirations. Before we get started, I just want to tell you to hit the like button, subscribe while you're here right now before you forget. And we're going to get into this juicy topic of ancestor reverence, ritual, and veneration. Ancestor reverence is at the root of it, because what you have in ancestor reverence are those who have lived and died and crossed back over into the spiritual realm, who have a connection to you by spiritual DNA, physical DNA, and by heart and soul, love and caring. So we have a whole bunch of things rolled into ancestor reverence. And they are the ones that are beyond the veil, that are looking after you, that are watching you, that are rooting for you to be successful in life and to have success where they didn't, to have happiness where they didn't, to have everything they did have, but even better. You know, as we are, those of us who are parents, or those of us who have people, young people that we care about, we want for them more than what we have had, because we know our own struggles and we know happiness is a very important part of life. Success is very important part of life. Joy is a very important part of life. So they want us to be able to get past those roadblocks and be successful, triumphant, and to achieve those things that will bring us joy and happiness. Now, ancestor reverence in and of itself is as old as human societies on this planet. Every ancient society that exists today had some form of ancestor reverence in their tradition. There are many societies that are no longer in existence today that also had ancestor reverence, that leave examples for us to go by. One of the particular ones that I am speaking from the experience of being a devotee is the Ifa Orisha tradition, and also the Palo Mayombe tradition, along with the ancient Kemet tradition. My experience, my training, my learning has been predominantly in all of those particular paths, with the Ifa Orisha tradition being the one that has been the deepest learning for me. So without further ado, let's move on to getting into the nitty-gritty of ancestor reverence. Ancestor reverence is based upon the knowledge, the knowing that once the physical body of a person passes away, the spiritual body remains. And the spiritual body, the spirit of the person is now released from the physical body to return to the spiritual realm, the realm of the ancestors, the astral realm of the ancestors, and continue on in their growth and development and their duties and responsibilities. And they continue their own journey in the land of the ancestors. It just doesn't stop with them dying, crossing over, and then that's it. They're just hanging out, waiting to do different things. They are involved in all kinds of endeavors and things that they choose to do, or things that, they are responsible for. And one of those things they're responsible for is to look after those who are still on earth, in this earth school, in this earth journey. So they have, and not every one of our ancestors is assigned that responsibility or has that responsibility, but there are those within our ancestral line that are particularly the ones that are always front and center when it comes to your spiritual growth, development, your happiness on earth, your triumph. Now, mind you, you can call on any of your deceased relatives that are ancestral, raised up in high ancestral positions to help you, and they will come. So just know that they are just a breath away. They are just a prayer away. And so you have all of these ancestors that are there for you to tap into, and they surround you, and they are constantly, giving you guidance. Sometimes we hear them distinctly. Sometimes it's just an idea. Sometimes it's a level of comfort that you get, but they are always there rooting for us and helping us navigate this place called Earth. They know so well because they lived it. And that's why Ancestor Reverence is our fundamental practice, our fundamental component in spirituality, because that is the support that is like none other is from your ancestors. So we start there. That is your foundation, your building block, your rock, your ancestors. So this is going to talk about how to give them reverence, how to honor them, how to venerate them, because the more that you do your ancestor reverence and recognize them and interact with them and give them a place in your life, the stronger their ability to help you in your life. Them being remembered, them being honored, their names being called, all of these things that we do, the offerings that we give them, all of this strengthens their ability to interact on the physical plane. Because remember now, ancestors now are in the non-physical realm, and we are in this very dense physical plane. And for them to come back and forth and help us, you need energy. You need a lot of energy to bridge the gap between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. So in honoring them, you boost them up. You boost up the energy connection between you, that they can utilize that energy connection in order to intercede on your behalf. So that is the basis of ancestor reverence. Anything in the Orisha tradition or Yoruba spiritual tradition starts foundationally, begins with your ancestors, because they have to be in alignment, and they have to be petitioned to understand what it is that you're trying to do as you navigate your spiritual growth and development. Perhaps you want to go on the path of becoming initiated in the Orisha tradition. You have to consult your ancestors and satisfy them in order for you to move forward with that path. And your elders, of course, will help you do that in the way that it needs to be done at that point in time for you, depending on where you're at, who you're traveling the path with, and all of that. So that part will be taken care of. But I'm just stressing that to underline how important ancestor reverence in African traditional spiritual thought and practice. Now, what we have here is in the Americas, where I am located. I'm located in the United States. We have had the ancestral traditions continue in the form of hoodoo tradition. And that is in and of itself a whole nother component. A lot has not been known about the hoodoo tradition and how it traveled down the ancestral line and how it maintains itself today. But that is an ancestral tradition, and there wasn't a lot of discussion about it, and it was held close to the vest. But that is one of the ways that ancestral traditions survived here in the United States. And then we have Cuba, Brazil, and a lot of places in the Caribbean where the Orisha, or the ancestral traditions, the spiritual traditions out of Africa, came to the United States. One of the largest groups we know are the Yoruba people, who came to the Caribbean and the United States, and particularly as a center spot, Cuba and Brazil held on to the traditions very strongly and were able to bring them into the United States. So we have it flourishes, Yoruba Orisha tradition flourishes in the United States. So does Palo Mayombe flourishes here, as well as other spiritual traditions out of Africa, which is, there is also the Ghanaian tradition of the Akan that are here as well in strength and numbers, and so many others. So I'm not trying to run a list, just mentioning a few. So that, and also the ancient Kemet tradition, which there was a break in the knowledge being passed down. So it has been resurfaced and, come back into the world through various people and groups. So now we have the ancient Kemet tradition, which is ancient Egypt, also flourishing in the United States and other parts in the world. And Yoruba tradition is all over the world. I know people in Ireland. I know people in different parts of Europe, in South America, North America, Central America, all places all over the world. So it's just not isolated in the Caribbean, Africa, and here, all over the world. Because we went all over the world. Our ancestors went all over the world. So it just didn't stay there. So ancestor reverence can be practiced in many different ways. There are many different forms. And so this is what I'm showing you today, or talking about with you today, is what I know, is what I've learned throughout the years of my 40 plus years of walking this path. So this is not by far the only way. So there are going to be people who will say, well, I do it this way and I don't do that, and this is wrong and this is right. This is what I know. And in particular with ancestral traditions, or reverence in particular, it's so unique to the person in the family line. So although you may have a particular practice and rites and rituals that are done, there are also is that room for creative space for the interaction between you and your ancestors to bring forth other things to include into your practices with them, into your reverence of them. So it's just not one way or the highway. Now there may be some don'ts, but there are definitely a lot of do's while you're doing when you're practicing ancestral reverence. It's not as strict as maybe when you are becoming a priest or a priestess in a tradition where you are initiated and you then start to deal with the powers, the potencies, I like to call them. They go by different names in different traditions, like Orisha, Abosun, Neteru, Lwa. But that is a very distinct set of practices that you must learn from an elder. Even ancestral reverence, you should at least learn from some things from someone that you know. But once you do, then you can kind of keep going on your own. So the purpose of this video is to give you some basic knowledge of how you can at least start to embark on your ancestral practices, as well as start to know what to look for or begin to get connected with elders who can take you even further along the way. So the things that I'm talking about today in this video also have been spoken about in the book that I wrote on Ancestor Reverence, and it is available on Amazon. And you can get a copy to get more in-depth, but we're going to start with some things in here and let's get going. Okay. So ancestral reverence is honoring your ancestors through prayer, through offerings, through candles and different things that you can do to remember them, honor them, and send them energy. One of the most basic ways in which you can honor them is just to remember them. Remember them, tell their stories to your children, your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, your little ones. Tell the stories of those who have gone before, that you know their stories. Say their names. Make sure the children know their names. Show their pictures if you have pictures. Make sure the children know who they are so that and encourage them to keep the stories going. I remember when my daughter's grandmother on her father's side passed away. Before she passed away, I made a promise to her that her granddaughter would know who she is. And because I would tell her stories all the time. And to this day, my daughter is 22, and I continue to tell her stories about her grandmother on both sides and her grandfather on both sides, who are now deceased and in the land of the ancestors. So she feels very connected to them. So anyway, that's one of the very basic ways. If you don't want to do nothing else, you can tell their stories if that's what you're most comfortable with. The next thing that you can do that is very basic and about Ancestor Reverence is to light a candle with a glass of water, say a prayer and say their names, or write their names down, or have a picture next to that in honor of them. And so those are some of the basic ways in which you can honor your ancestors. One other people on the planet that I want to say have very strong ancestral traditions are in Asia. Many parts of Asia honor their ancestors. They have big shrines and altars, and ensure that they regularly give their ancestors offerings and remembrances of who they are. So that's what I mean about ancestral reverence across the planet. Every people, ever since societies have formed, ancestral reverence has been a part. Now, the one I have to say, the one group where ancestral reverence sort of went by the wayside was the Europeans. When Christianity came in very strongly, all of those types of ancient practices were stomped out. And so ancestral reverence as a practice within families and individuals became null and void, became evil, became devil worship, became all kinds of crazy things. And all of that was seen as evil and against God, the creator. And, it was, to me, it was a form of control. But when you go back beyond Christianity and the formation of it in European culture, you see the reverence for ancestors was very much a part of the ancient European practices. So anyway, first of all, going into ancestor reverence and practices, understand that your ancestors are there for you. They love you. They want you to succeed, and they are waiting to be called upon to help you. They do what they can without being called upon, and they do a lot, but they can do even more when you begin to recognize them and honor them, just because of the sacrifices that they did in order for you to be here in this moment in time. If nothing else, giving honor to them because they paved the way for us to be here today should be the motivating factor in doing this. And everything else is extra. What they do to help you is extra, but they are there to help you. And in my traditions, we definitely honor them, propitiate them, pray, call upon them, ask their advice, and give them reverence in the form of food and flowers and gifts, and candles, and lots of prayers. I love the prayer part. The prayer part is so strong to me. I will do a prayer in a heartbeat. In some spiritual traditions, it is said that ancestors can travel to different parts of the spiritual realm where even other spirits cannot tread. So they have the ability to move about on your behalf, to retrieve certain things that they need to retrieve, to do certain things that they need to do, to make way for things for you on this earth that not even what they call the higher spirits can do, because they have the ability to do that because they were, because of the energetic makeup of the ancestors being born on earth and died, and they are a human construct. So their ability to travel to different realms in the spiritual world for you is there. Another thing about ancestral reverence to recognize is that you have within your family line, within your ancestral line, thousands upon thousands of ancestors that have walked this earth before you. You have ancient ancestors that walk with you. So when I talk about your ancestors, I'm not only talking about those whose names you can call and those whose names your parents can call or your grandparents can call. We're talking about those whose names that we have forgotten, that we don't even know. But within your family line, there are all kinds of people who have experience and have education and have developed themselves while they were here on earth in certain things such as craftsmanship, business acumen, teacher, healing, masonry, trades, being a tradesperson, going across and taking care of that kind of economic business, seamstresses, tailors, dancers, singers, performers, actors. You can go on, scientists, you can go on and on and on, and understand doctors of all kinds, and you can go on and on and on. And the beauty of Ancestor Reverence is that you can then tap into that ancestral wisdom that has come before you. So whatever it is that you are pursuing in life, trust me, there's someone in your ancestral line that has done it. So when you want to go down a particular path, then you can sit and you can meditate and you can sit with your ancestors and ask for those that are skilled in that particular way to come forward and to help you to excel in the thing that you are trying to accomplish. So we have at our disposal the wisdom, collective wisdom of thousands upon thousands of ancestors there waiting for you to tap into. I have an example again of my daughter who is a designer, and every so often when she gets to a point in her craft and her work, she will call on her aunt. Her great aunt is to her my aunt, who was a designer in her life, and she will go to them and the other ones. She calls on all who have the skill. You want to leave anybody out, and then she gets a lot of the answers or the inspiration that she needs in order to move forward in what she's doing. So that's one of the ways that you can tap into your ancestral wisdom. So they're there waiting to help us. We are not alone. We are not alone on this path. We are with spirits who are there to help us personally. So why not tap into that wisdom? They're waiting for us. It's part of the spiritual, how would you say, makeup of how things go. When we become outside of our physical bodies, we are looking out for those we left behind. Wouldn't you, if you left and you still had the ability to see what was going on, you'd want to intercede and help your loved ones. So we want to give them everything they need in order to be there for us, in order to feel loved, to feel honored, to feel lifted, to feel remembered, because it's a relationship of reciprocity. We give, they give, and it's an endless cycle of that, and it continues on because we teach our children ancestral reverence and they help us too. When I speak of ancestors, I'm talking about ancestors who are people who have lived on this earth, lived a decent life, not a perfect human being, but a good person who has lived this life and then died and became an ancestor. We are not talking about those who, when they lived life, they were responsible for deep, massive, diabolical pain and suffering to others. We're not talking about those folks. Those folks, when you cross over and you go, when you become deceased and you cross over, you don't just change like that. When you cross over, there's a process for you to get reacclimated to the ancestral realm. And then a lot of the things that you were into and how you were, you go into the ancestral realm with that. So it takes a while for you to unlearn what you became to be once you cross over, especially someone who was responsible for deep harm and pain to others. Those ancestors need to be elevated, and we don't deal with them on our ancestral altar. They are dealt with in a different way. And then once they become elevated through our help, then we can then include them with our ancestral reverence practices. So so I just wanted to make sure that we know that when we say ancestors, we're talking about elevated spirits. We're not talking about just everybody. And there's always it's just a small fraction of people who don't make it into that classification. But if they do, we want to just definitely ensure that they are elevated, and that and then they can be helpful to us. There are certain ways that you can connect with your ancestors to start with. Like I mentioned earlier, you can just remember them and tell their stories. Now, if you want to, and that is just giving them honor and lifting them up. Now, if you want to have more of a connection for them to be more active in your life, then setting up a prayer, saying prayers for them, calling out their names, having conversations with your ancestors as well, is one of the ways that you increase your connection with your ancestors. Ritual and songs and dances, remembering them, talking to them from time to time. You can, whatever sacred text that you are into, whatever it is, you can read some favorite passages from them, the books, and then, let your ancestor know this is for you. I want to say this prayer to make sure that you're uplifted and that you continue to be healthy on the ancestral realm. Now, one of the most common ways that we honor our ancestors is by creating an ancestral altar in our homes. An ancestral altar creates a sacred container, a sacred space for your ancestors. It's like a mini portal in your home for them to have their energy concentrated. So an altar gives you the ability to go to your altar and sit and pray, give reverence, ask questions, give offerings, sing songs, talk, laugh, light candles, flowers, fruits, food, personal items you put on the ancestral altar because that person owned that item. So you would put that on the altar to have them come close. And then you always leave room for those ancestors that are not known, that are your ancestors that are here to help you, your benevolent ancestors. So an altar is one of the basic ways that you can do. It's like preparing a guest room for them in your house where you're like inviting them. You're like, listen, this is your permanent space in my house. Feel comfortable and be closer, even closer than you are by having an ancestral altar in your home. It's one of my favorite things to do. I sit at my ancestral altar, and there are very, very many different ways that you can have an altar. Some have it on the floor, some have it on a table. But whatever way that you do it, when you have one, you will feel the difference in your home. And they bring an elevated energy and a protective energy that is really, really good. And so that's something to look into if that's something that resonates with you that you'd like to do. When we talk about ancestors, I like to, in my book that I mentioned earlier, I like to break them, and you'll find the chart that I'm about to talk about right now. You will find that there are recently deceased ancestors. I categorize them into recently deceased, and long deceased, because being reacclimated to the spiritual realm takes time. So you have your recently deceased ancestors where, they're getting, they just got back over there to that particular home and they're getting reacclimated. Then you have deceased ancestors that have been there for a while and they are, comfortable in that realm and they're going about their particular existence on that realm. And then you have your long deceased ancestors, which they're very familiar. They are, they're professionals at being your ancestors, and they know the way around, and they have been fully reacclimated, and they are ready and on point to assist you. So in my chart, in the recently deceased, they just crossed over. They've reunited with their family there. There needs time to adjust. The recently deceased, you don't want to put them on the ancestral altar right away because you don't want to disturb their reacclimation into the ancestral realm. May be unable to contact until initial period of crossing over and readjustment has passed. Some are known to do brief visits to loved ones to reassure them. The next thing is deceased ancestors, which is, it could be any span of time because time there is different than time here. But to give it a time frame, it'd be like anywhere from maybe 11 years to 30 years. They've been adjusted to returning to the ancestral realm. They're continuing to learn and develop, enjoying time with their other deceased family, enjoying being without the restrictions of a physical body, taking on family assistance missions, going back and forth and doing what they need to do to help us. And then I categorize the last category is long deceased, and that's 30 years or plus. Like I said, these are loose numbers. I just wanted to give some numbers to give people an idea that it takes time for the ancestors to get into these different modes of being back in the realm of the ancestors. So the long deceased is adept at being an ancestor, continuing to learn and develop stronger ability to help and intervene on your behalf, may become a guardian angel to a descendant, possibly prepping to reincarnate. So you have, those categories just to give you an idea that not all ancestors are at the same place and the same development once they cross over. So we have to be aware of that when we are trying to contact them, because a lot of times when we've just lost someone, we want to contact them, make sure they're okay. We're worried. And that's not the time to put them on the ancestor, but you can do something basic like a prayer, a glass of water, some flowers, a candle, white candle, and just, send them prayers to be healthy and well on their journey back to the land of the ancestors, and send them lots of love. That's the best thing you can do to a recently deceased. I hope what I've gone over in this video helps you have a little more of an understanding of ancestor reverence, and to know that ancestor reverence is your right. It is part of who you are as a person here on earth, because you are a spiritual being in a physical body, and your natural home actually is the spirit realm. So communicating and contacting your ancestors and giving them reverence and honor is something that is so natural and so right, as far as giving you that foundation in life and giving them the honor that they deserve. So I just wish you well on your ancestor reverence journey. Also, just want to repeat that this book is available to help the beginners know. So the name of the book is Ancestor Reverence and Ritual, a beginner's guidebook on how to honor those who have gone before, by yours truly, Reverend MignonGrayson. And it's available on Amazon. I'll have the link in the description. Feel free to get a copy. It's both digital and in paperback. So if whatever way you like to read, you can get a copy. But thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. Any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to those who you think would be helpful to. Sacred Mysteries.